You know, we all have this incredible secret world living inside our own heads, a place we can slip into whether we're wide awake or sound asleep. It's this amazing, totally universal human thing.
Of course you have, right? That moment where the real world just kind of fades away, and suddenly you're off building a whole new reality in your mind? Or maybe you snapped awake from a dream that was so real, so vivid, you had to take a second and ask yourself, whoa, where on earth did that come from?
Well, today we're going to dive deep into those two states, the familiar daydream and the, let's face it, pretty mysterious sleep dream. They feel like cousins, sure, but as we're about to see, they are worlds apart in how they're actually built by your brain.
And to really get a handle on this, we're going to look at them through a pretty cool new lens called the Brain Kinematics Model, or BKM for short. It gives us this whole new language to talk about how our thoughts actually move and flow.
So, let's start with the basics. Just what does it feel like? What's the actual on-the-ground experience of being in a daydream versus being in a sleep dream?
Well, right off the bat, daydreams usually feel way more logical, more orderly. The story makes a certain kind of sense, and the emotions, they're usually pretty manageable. Sleep dreams, though, that's a different story. They're often completely chaotic, jumping from one bizarre scene to the next, and the feelings can be unbelievably powerful. And this table here, it just breaks it down perfectly. I mean, look at control. In a daydream, you've got at least some say in what happens. You can kind of steer the ship. But in a REM sleep dream, nope. You have almost zero control. You are just along for the ride. The whole thing is a total sensory immersion, the story is surreal, and the emotional volume is cranked all the way to 11. So these huge differences in feeling, they map directly to what's going on under the hood. Let's actually pop the hood on the brain and see who's in the driver's seat when you're in each of these states.
Okay, so during a daydream, your brain's conductor, that's the executive control network, or ECN, is still very much active. It stays linked up with the part of your brain that does all the mind-wandering, the default mode network. And that connection, that's the crucial part. It's what lets you know that you're daydreaming, and even lets you nudge the story where you want it to go.
But when you're in a deep sleep dream, that conductor is totally offline. The executive part of your brain just powers down and disconnects from your mind-wandering network. Instead, that network plugs directly into your brain's raw emotional and sensory centers. And that's exactly why logic just flies out the window and you don't even think to question why your cat is suddenly reciting Shakespeare.
So if you remember one thing, remember this. In daydreams, that strong connection between the executive and default networks keeps you in the captain's chair. Your emotional center is kept in check, and the sensory gate to the outside world is still a little bit open. You know, a loud noise can snap you right out of it. But in a REM sleep dream, that connection is severed. Your amygdala, the emotion center, goes into overdrive, and the sensory gate slams shut, locking you inside that dream world.
Okay, so this is where things get really interesting. Remember that brain kinematics model we talked about? It gives us this incredible new way to actually describe the dynamics of these brain states, the push and pull of our thoughts.
A key idea in the BKM is something called a strain package. Just imagine it as this super concentrated burst of pure emotional energy. In our sleep dreams, these packages can be so intense, so powerful, that they completely take over and dictate the entire story from the inside out.
And check out this quote from an analysis of a creative text. It absolutely nails the idea. It explains that a powerful image, in this case a dove, it doesn't come from some logical plot point. No, it erupts directly from a peak of emotional significance. As it says right here, the emotion just completely overwhelms the plot. That's a strain package in action. The feeling literally creates the reality.
So you can think of it like this. BKM would describe a daydream as a kind of calm river. There's this nice balance between the logical theme and the emotion. They flow together. But a sleep dream, that's a powerful storm. The emotion is the storm, and it just completely dominates. The story, the characters, the plot, they're all just swept along for the ride.
And what's so cool is that this model isn't just for dreams. You can use it to analyze the structure of basically any thought. Look at these examples from personal writing. You can see how a thought can be really algorithmic, just based on recognizing patterns. Or it can be a mix of emotion and logic. Or it can be emotion dominant, where a single feeling is the main thing organizing the whole thought. It gives us a real vocabulary for how we build these inner worlds.
And across all of these different states, our brains tend to be a little repetitive. They reuse certain core images and symbols. BKM calls them recurrent attractor motifs. Honestly, you can just think of them as your mind's personal lexicon, its favorite words, the building blocks, like the sky or stars or certain animals, that your brain pulls from over and over again to tell its stories.
Which, of course, brings us to the biggest question of all. Why? Why do we even have these two totally different ways of drifting off? What's the point of it all?
Well, it seems there are like two different workshops in your mind, each with a very specific job. Daydreams are your simulation lab. Because your executive function is still online, it's a safe space to test drive future scenarios, to work through problems, maybe even rehearse a tough conversation. But sleep dreams, that's the integration workshop. That's where your brain gets to work processing unresolved emotions and locking in memories, all without the strict rules of waking logic getting in the way.
And get this, here's a fascinating theory. The two workshops might actually be connected. The daydream retrieval hypothesis suggests that what you think about during the day, your daydreams, might actually be setting the stage, or planting the seeds, for your sleep dreams that night. It's like you're teeing up the raw material for your brain to process later on.
So, the next time you catch yourself staring into space, or you wake up from some bizarre dream, just take a second. Appreciate the incredible invisible work your brain is doing, and think about your own inner world, that personal lexicon of symbols that it uses. What are its favorite words? And what do you think they might be trying to tell you?